My name is Dr. Rufus Spann. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Southern California in the Masters of School Counseling program. My background has just been really working and centering around mental health. So my credentials are a licensed professional counselor, I'm a nationally certified counselor, approved clinical supervisor, as well as I have some other identities that are in another profession, but I'm a nationally certified school psychologist, which I am very happy and proud of. That all comes together and is really a hallmark of my identity, as I do sit in each one of those particular professions at different times. Now, my historical identity, my perspectives as a part of the Black diaspora has made such an impact on how I show up as a mental health professional. I use that as I go into the school systems. I use that as I center myself with conversations. But I also used that as I went into my own practice and my own profession as a counselor. I didn't see many people that looked like me. I didn't have any voices that encouraged me. And so I had to bring in my ancestors. I brought in my mom, I brought in my dad, I brought in my great aunt, I brought in people that said, you can do this, and we need for you to bring this back to the community. We need for you to bring this back to the people. And that has always been my premise, that I believe that I can help to culturally shift what is the identity and the narrative around counseling and therapy for people of color, for Black people, Indigenous people, engage in the profession as well as help others, is to help make sure that there's equity and social justice even within mental health, so that all people can get the service they need. Working with youth of color, as well as working with youth in general, it's actually been a big passion of mine, but particularly working with youth of color, sitting at the table, particularly the 504 meetings, the IEP meetings, and trying to shift the conversations about what is behavior, what is mental health, what is mental wellness. So that has been a big part of my second identity. So as I think about my identity, being an African-American male, coming out of a Gullah culture, coming out of a culture that's even West Indian, and coming here to the United States as family and people, I knew mental health was important, but it wasn't talked about. And it was just the nurturing and supporting of individuals and identities. So with all those identities, I kind of brought that into the actual profession. I knew that I had an ancestral identity. I knew I had a centered identity being African American, and I knew I had a helping spirit. Now, what did that all mean into a field and identity where I saw more Caucasian white females, Caucasian males, and even the theorists didn't look like me? I knew that there was a part of me that I wanted to bring into that process. And so I've done that. I've pushed back against narratives that said, hey, this profession is not going to be lucrative. You may not be successful because you're a Black male. And all those messages were being sent to me and told to me, but I knew I brought everything that I said before about my people, my identity, what I wanted to bring to the profession. And I still use that. I use that as a way of navigating through systems that sometimes reinforce what we know as oppressive, what we know as systems that really don't open up the opportunities for conversation and the doors for people that look like me, as well as when we think about our clients. Think about people of color, Black, Indigenous identities. The actual profession sometimes doesn't show them that this is the space for you. We'll encourage people and say, you should seek mental health services, you should seek counseling, but the message back to them at the greater, larger good is that, Black people don't go to counseling. That's not what we do. So it's a counter message to what we're saying. We're saying one thing, perpetuating another, and then once the client actually gets into those spaces, they don't feel as comfortable because they're not being treated within their own culture and their own identity. There's social political issues that are happening right now in our climate, from the local level to the national and to world and globally, has had such an impact. One, because I think within the community of BIPOC or cutie BIPOC, there's a shift in how we see ourselves within the actual ecosystem, within the actual entirety, as well as how the world is starting to look at a community of people, a diaspora of people differently, and seeing that there's an empowerment, there's a movement and a shift and change, not just in looking at civil rights, but looking at what goes beyond that. What is my mental right? What is my financial right? Where are these other places that seemingly things are okay and they're not okay? Since the public execution of George Floyd, since other things that have happened in the world, I think there's just been a major shift and a major change. And so that was one of the biggest questions that we had at Henry Health, now Hurdle, and talking about what's happening for the Black, Indigenous, people of color, and seeking services and how they have services. And I preface that in such a way because access to services If I have a private practice that's 30 miles away from a community, we're in rural Mississippi, and somebody cannot get to my private practice, that is a disservice because the access, they may not have transportation. If they have transportation, maybe they're saving the gas or the money for things that they need as other resources. But now we have telemental health services. With those particular services, we're now able to have access to people across the states, across the nation, depending on location. I think ultimately, if we're continuing to talk about how do we get more Black, Indigenous people of color into the profession, more Black, Indigenous people of color into coming into seeking services, we have to continue to think about how we evolve as a profession, how we evolve in our thoughts behind what is wellness and mental health. That is not something that is so salient and so concrete that it cannot continue to find evolution. I actually charge us all to say continue to evolve on what could be new and innovative to continue to support identities and continue to support how we look at our profession. Our profession is still in what is considered a very young stage, and that's just mental health and wellness in general. Now, if we think about it in historical perspectives, it's been thousands of years that we've been looking at the psyche and identity. But I think what we can do now is really circumvent some of what was just told to us. This is how you should show up. This is how you should be and act and think based on theory that really didn't have us centered in mind. And now we can think about, how do I think about what's best in serving people of color? What's best in serving me as a therapist? Center your own identity and center the people that are coming to you in those conversations and in your therapy practice.